Okay, I am doing my reading ladder over The Color Purple. Some major themes in this one are sexism, abuse, racism, social class. There's a few others, but like some of the main ones that I'm kind of focusing on are those. So, first, I would start with this article. It's called African Americans in the 20th Century. Some questions that I would have is what did they do for work? What other factors were an issue for African Americans during this time? So this article just kind of goes over like the legal and political status of African Americans in the early 1900s, and it talks about like it goes actually it goes into the late 1800s into like the mid 1900s, but like it focuses in on the beginning of the 1900s too. So I chose to do this for that reason. Some things to consider when doing this is some students might take offense just because some of the things talked about within the article, but it's not really too bad. There might be some things that your students don't really understand just because it's like political and legal stuff, but overall, I think they would get the general effect of what it is. So in this article, it talks about that. It talks about where they were in their status and where they were going. And it talks about the things that were supposed to be changed, but they never really changed because of like they were African Americans. No one wanted to give them the same type of rights. And I just want my students to know these things going into reading the novel so that they know what exactly was going on during this time. So moving on, I would go into this blog, and it's called Early 1900s Black American South. So some more questions were what was going on during this time that affected African American lives, some sicknesses, the Great Migration, the Great Depression, and then I pulled out this quote. It says, women's main responsibilities centered around the domestic sphere. They ran the household, raised the children, cooked the food, as well as worked in the field when needed. Yet they still found themselves in a subservient role to men. It was not uncommon for Black women to find themselves in circumstances. So, this specific quote is kind of what the whole blog post is about. It talks about what women went through, and it uses the novel we are reading, The Color Purple, as a reference. So this shows that like what we are reading and what we are seeing in the movie when we watch the movie as well, they are seeing what was really going on. They are seeing how hard women had it, what their husbands did to them, what they had to go through, and I want my students to know this and be aware of what is going to happen in the novel so that they are prepared. This does talk about abuse and um, violence in this blog post, so some students might be aware of that. Um, yeah. And then the next thing is this TED Talk by Ruby Sells. How can we start to heal the pain of social division? How is racism still an issue? How has it impacted the US over the years? So in this TED Talk, Ruby talks about like her life and what she's gone through and how things haven't changed and how they have changed. And she even tells a story about whenever her and her friends they were like in a protest and like something happened, they got arrested, and she says specifically they didn't do anything wrong, but the cop, like one of the cops that was like with her and her friends, shot her friend right in front of her face. So you have to be aware of that, like be aware of the violence she talks about in it, and some of the things that she talks might be a trigger for some of your students, just if they are uncomfortable or don't want to hear this or take offense. But she does talk about gun violence, and she talks about some other things she went through. She's always been an activist in women's rights and trying to end racism, but she talks a lot about that. She talks a lot about her specific stories. I want my students to be able to see firsthand someone that has experienced this, someone that has gone through these things. So next we would move into The Color Purple, and then in this book, we see a woman, Sally, who is living the life of by the authority of the abusive men in her life, from being abused by her dad to her husband controlling her every move. Throughout Sally's life, she faces issues with racism, social class, sexism, ableism, and abuse. She writes letters to God about her life and the trauma she has gone through and how she has overcome these things. Eventually fighting through, Sally stands up for herself and the other women in her life in order to get out of the life she's in. So this book is so important for students to read because not only are they reading something that is similar to things that did happen in the past. They are learning things and how to be able to control them in real life, because my students aren't going to know some of the things that happened back then that they should be aware of now. And they're not going to know how some of these themes are actually happen without seeing firsthand how they do happen. So in this novel, they are going to be introduced to a lot of different themes, a lot of abuse, violence. They're going to see and read things that might make them uncomfortable, but getting through it and reading it will help them in the long run. So that is the novel. And then next we would move into the movie. I want them to see this movie because reading the things that they would be reading in this book, just like the trauma that she goes through and the violence, seeing it and understanding that it really is as brutal as it is in a book is important. I want my students to realize like these things are real and there are things we can do to make things better. And seeing through a movie, like they're going to be able to some of my students will be able to relate to a movie better than they will a novel, but after already reading the novel, they might understand why certain things are happening in the movie the way they are. So after the movie, I would move on to some poems. So most of these poems, some things to be aware of is they're not violent necessarily, but they do say some things that might make students uncomfortable or take offense. So the White House poem, this quote says, I must keep my heart inviolate against the potent poison of your life. So this one I chose kind of because it relates to the main character. She is constantly feeling like she's constantly feeling like she is pressured because of her husband making her do all these things. He constantly is making her do things that she doesn't want to do. She has to take care of his kids. She can't do anything unless he knows she's doing it. So I chose that one for that. And then Pressure of Racism, it says this hatred for all mankind needs to be ended, and the only way to do this is to realize we are all equal in the eyes of God. I chose this one for it mentions God, religion. That's a big thing in the novel as well. And then I also chose it because I feel like this this poem is about people thinking they're more and like deserving more, and when in reality, like that's not what you're gonna get, even though like that is what needs to be done specifically. And then The Color Purple, you pretend you're all right, laugh when you're sad, hide your true feelings, never show if you're mad. So I chose this one because I feel like it relates to the main character specifically. She's always hiding how she really feels to everyone around her besides, I mean, she tells her sister in the novel and a few others, but this is really like her identity. I feel like when you read this poem, you're seeing her identity and you're seeing traits about her that relate to her in the novel and in the movie. And then the next one it's called Fight Song by Rachel Platten. This song, she wrote this song because at the time of writing the song, she just felt like she wasn't enough. She was a female in the industry and she just wasn't going to be enough for what she wanted to be. These lyrics, this is my fight song, take back my life song, prove I'm alright song, my power's turned on, starting right now, I'll be strong, I'll play my fight song, and I don't really care if anybody else believes, because I've still got a lot of fight left to me. This song I feel like is kind of a theme song for our novel. Sally is constantly trying to do better and prove that she can do more, even though no one believes her, she still like fights on and does what she does to be able to be happy in her life. And then the next song would be Superwoman by Alicia Keys. And Alicia Keys, she's very involved. She's an activist. She's a feminism. She's very involved in making women or helping women be who they truly can be. I think that's the term I'm looking for. But so this says, because I am a superwoman, yes I am, yes she is, even when I'm a mess, I still put on my vest with an S on my chest, oh yes, I am a superwoman. I chose this one because it kind of relates to the main character too. She overcomes everything, and in the end she realizes she did what she needed to do to overcome and become this powerful woman and get get through her life and get past all the struggle and the trauma and get past being someone she wasn't and becoming the person she wanted to be this whole time. So I would definitely show my last two songs, and then this is the last one. Any questions? So yeah, that is my reading letter.